Hello everyone and welcome back to the Belgian Beer Brothers channel. I am still Cedric and today we're gonna talk about one of the huge classics when it comes to Belgian beer history. I've been wanting to talk about this brewery for a while now because they did have their anniversary last year. They have a lot of beers and mainly a lot of breweries as well. We've talked about some of them already. But I could not talk about this brewery without starting with their absolute classic, namely Duvel. Duvel from the Duvel Moortgat Brewery, basically the OG strong blonde, the predecessor of many strong Belgian beers or golden ales, but we will be talking about that in a minute. Where to start? I guess somewhere in the beginning, but unfortunately I couldn't find that much info about the family before the start of the brewery. I do know that the brewery was founded by Jan Leonard Moortgat when he was 30 years old, and he married Maria de Blok, and they bought a farm and started a farm brewery, as many people did in that time, in Breendonk, and this was 1871. And by doing this, he became, or the estate became, one of roughly 4,000 breweries active in Belgium at the time. Before that, the Moortgat family already was a family of brewers, be it also in a small home brewery, and it was mainly a political family as well. They've had many brewers and many politicians, many people in the city council and even mayors in Steenhuffel. And Steenhuffel is where currently Palm Breweries is located. So small world. But in 1871, Jan Leonard with his wife Maria went to Breendonk and started their rather small farm slash brewery there. They did a lot of the malting themselves, and basically they did everything themselves. And they started out with some high fermentation beers like Stavelot and mainly local beers, and they also brewed vinegar. At the time, if you had bad beer, you could distill it, make vinegar out of it. Jan Leonard was 30 years old when he did this, meaning that up until he was 30, he actually helped his mom at the brewery while his father was working as a politician. Now, several years later, of course, Jan Leonard married Maria, and they got 3 sons, if I'm not mistaken. And around 1900, the turn of the century, Joseph and Victor joined in the business. Now, apparently Jan Leonard was doing something right, because not only was he selling locally, but he actually sold up until Brussels, as far as Brussels. I believe they even had a warehouse in Laken, which is where the royal family is located. But having their own warehouse at the edge of Brussels is actually a measure of success for a small local brewery. Joseph became the brewer, and Victor actually did the deliveries by horse and carriage to Brussels. Then around 1918, just after the First World War, Albert joined, and Albert was also a brewer, and he wanted to join in on the success of the English ales. Problem with that was that he needed a proper yeast strain. Fine. A story goes that Albert went by boat to Scotland, and he had a lot of resistance of the local brewers, but after quite a while they got friendly, and he managed to take a Scottish yeast strain home. Another story that I've heard, and I have no confirmation of this whatsoever, so this is just a story, In 1909, John Martin settled in Antwerp as a brewer and had very good contacts with the English brewers, or actually the UK brewers. And the story goes that John Martin actually just brought the strain with him, so Albert never had to go to Scotland. Nonetheless, the story is what it is, and even a comic book was made of the journey of Albert going to Scotland. I guess I'll never know what the real story was. Now, around that time, 1918, Albert developed a nice dark Scotch ale, a bit on the strong side, and it was called Victory Ale, of course, following a world war that we won, sort of, mainly with the help of the Americans and the English, and this was a Scotch ale, so a UK beer, so they called it Victory Ale. Now, this was a Scotch ale, meaning a sweet, dark ale, but like I said, on the rather strong side. And they kept developing and test brewing. And in 1923 they did a tasting session with some locals, and apparently a shoemaker called Van de Wouwer yelled out from this new test beer, "Godverdomme wat een duvel." Meaning in English, "God damn, what a devil is this." And he meant, wow, this is such a strong beer, it's like the devil is entering. Actually, they thought this was so fun that from 1923 on, they marketed the beer under the name Duvel, or Devil. Of course, being a rather Christian or Catholic country, the church wasn't too happy with that. Anywho, they kept selling it as Duvel, and soon thereafter many beers followed. So around the 30s they had an extra blonde luxury pilsner that was rebranded in the 70s as Extra Pilsner, and in 1991 it got its final name as Belpils. You don't see it that often anymore in Belgium, but they still brew it and it's still in existence. And then around 1945, so the Second World War, the export pilsners were very popular. Back in the days, you had the luxury pilsners for the people with money, and the people with less money, they drank export, which was technically a beer of lesser quality, but it was very popular. So what happened was that Moortgat developed an export, and it became so popular that in 1965 it became Vedette. And funny thing is, when you look at the label of a Vedette, it doesn't say export anymore, but it says Vedette Extra Pils, which is a throwback to the Extra Pilsner from the 30s. Of course, over the years the recipes have changed and a lot has happened, but Vedette is still one of the main brands of Duvel Moortgat. Even stronger, Vedette even got their own marketing team and their own branding team within the brewery. So that says something. Around 1950, the third generation of Moortgat doesn't really take over, but they join in the brewery. And these were four guys, like two brothers and two cousins, called Bert, Marcel, Léon and Emile. These guys take it upon them to further expand the brewery, and they were doing quite good work, because in 1963 Abbé de Maretsu, the Maretsu Abbey, wants to expand their range of beers and wants to stabilize the quality of their beers. And they reach out to the University of Leuven and they actually redirect the abbey to the Moortgat Brewery. Back then it was still called the Moortgat Brewery. So the Catholic University of Leuven redirects the Abbey of Maretsu to Moortgat, and I think that is also a measure of success when something like that happens. Now in the late 60s, branding and marketing is huger than ever, and the Moortgat family has a glass designed. Now I have one here, one there. I'll tell you a bit about them later on. But they have this very interesting shape. This was the first chalice-shaped glass, and it's actually developed with a narrower top and a tulip top to keep the aromas and the carbonation inside, but still open up to make it very drinkable. And yeah, it just keeps your beer great for as long as it can. It's also a very large glass, allowing for a big head of foam. And one detail that Duvel started back in the 60s was, these days, in the middle here, there is a D engraved. Now what that does is, basically that does the same as the tiny ball in the cans of Guinness. It captures CO2 and releases it slowly, so it allows for a constant stream of bubbles in your glass. Something that we used to do with a sugar cube in champagne glasses back when I was a maitre d'. Of course, in those days it wasn't a laser engraved D, it was 2 or 3 fine scratches, and apparently judging from the scratches you can even tell more or less the age of the glass. Now before that there were a whole myriad of glasses. They had long glasses, flute glasses, many glasses, but this became the official Duvel glass in the late 60s. Now after that the brewery just grew and grew and grew, and in the 1970s they started to export beer to the neighboring countries, so mainly Holland, France, a bit of Germany, and later on they just went all out. Currently they're practically all over the world. I have friends in Thailand, in the USA, in Africa even, and they are all able to enjoy a Duvel and a Vedette from time to time, so be it quite expensive maybe. Again in the late 60s, in 1967 to be precise, they researched a lot about the yeast strains and the quality of the beer. In the past 100 years, brewers have strived to keep the quality of their beer stable. We always want the same product. We don't want a sweet Duvel this week and a bitter one next week. So as consumers have demands, brewers had to follow. And in 1967, Jean de Klerk, who is a professor, analyzes the yeast strains that Duvel uses. He finds out that in their yeast it's actually a combination of between 10 and 20 strains. He does a lot of testing. He isolates the ones that deliver the optimal taste, the optimal result, and discards the rest. And with that combination of yeast strains, they keep brewing. Now, of course, you get a different kind of beer then. And in the late 60s, actually around 67, 68, the beer actually changes from a strong Scotch ale to a clear, strong blonde beer. The beer we know today. And it hasn't changed since, actually. This is such a success, and this is actually the first real strong blonde ale. And other brewers get jealous. So during the 80s, 83, 84, 85, you see some more strong blonde beers rising from everywhere, and they all want to surf along on this wave of unholy success because they get names like Satan, Judas, Lucifer, and actually most of them that are still in existence weren't even bad beers. So it's not just copycat behavior, it actually put a movement in motion. So fast forward for another, let's say, 10-20 years, 1998, the fourth generation of Moortgat takes the lead, and in 1998 Michel Moortgat becomes CEO. Now, he was already in the board since 1993, but in 1998 he becomes CEO. He leads the company along with his brothers Philippe and Bernard. Now, Duvel Moortgat, or up until then Moortgat Brewery, is a large company, and just like many breweries, they also own a lot of real estate, a lot of pubs, bars, restaurants, some warehouses. And they also own Duvel, which is actually a drink center, a distribution center, not a brewery, not to be confused with Duvel Brewery that we talked about in the last video when I was talking about the Boelens Brewery. That was East Flanders, this is Waregem, Antwerp. But Michel Moortgat actually manages the breweries in the group, and his brothers each have one other part of the company. One does real estate and one does Duvel, the drink center, the distribution. In 1999, the brothers and the board decide to take the company public, and they go to the Central Stock Exchange, the Euronext. This is a success, but yeah, things changed, and they've been there for about 15 years. Apparently the Moortgat family isn't too keen on listening to shareholders and want to do what they want to do. So they bought back all the shares, and in 2013 they left the stock exchange. So yeah, it is family owned again. So from the 150 years that it exists, 14 years were public with them as main shareholders, and the rest of the time they were the only shareholders, and yeah, they're a family brewery again. During that time, a lot of innovations were done. So in 2007, for example, the first triple hop Duvel was developed, and they've had several since. They've had, basically a triple hop is like a Duvel, but they replace one hop strain with another, and they dry hop it with that strain as well, and that creates a very specific taste, a very special beer. And each year they did another hop strain. So they had Sriracha Age, they had Mosaic, they had Equinox Amarillo, then the numbered one, what's it called, HBC 291, Citra and Cashmere, and those last two are now still on the market. These were all one-off beers, and then the public has spoken, and Citra and Cashmere was so popular that they started selling them again. I believe Citra in 2016, 17, somewhere around that, and Cashmere in 2020, which I was very happy about. In 2009 they also developed the Duvel Distilled, which is actually a whiskey distilled from Duvel. Again, started in limited editions, and now, not every year, but from time to time they bring out one of those distills or one of those whiskeys. Last year, the 150 year anniversary, they also brought out a whiskey in a limited edition bottle. I might show it here somewhere. Beautiful bottle, but very expensive. In 2016, the first Duvel barrel aged came to the market. Of course, this wasn't the first barrel aged beer, but Duvel recognizes success from other brewers and they like to pitch in here and there, of course, to enjoy the profits a bit. Apparently they do this quite well because there are 7, I believe. Yeah, I believe this year the 7 just came out in the last week. And they, every time they mature the beer on different casks. They have had whiskey casks, bourbon casks, Jamaican rum barrels, and I believe this year was Irish rye whiskey. Not sure, I have to look it up. Like I said, in 2021 they have been around for 150 years. They had a huge party, almost like a festival. They built breweries within the brewery, 2 days of partying. A lot of people were invited. I had the sheer luck of being invited as well. Party of the year, of course, there weren't many parties because there was a lockdown. But that was awesome, and they did bring out an extra beer called the Duvel 666, which is now one of the main beers in the range. This is a very drinkable IPA, and they never had something below 8.5% except for the green Duvel, but that's no longer with us. Unfortunately, I like that one. Currently, they have a brew house with a 500 hectoliter capacity, and that is per brew, not per day. So I do believe that they brew between 30 and 45 brews a week. So some quick calculations bring us to 20,000 hectoliters per year, and I believe they are still expanding. That's not the only thing they are doing. Duvel Moortgat, which became the name in 1999, by the way, when they went to the stock market. They recognized that the Duvel beer was so important to the brewery and to the success of the brewery that they changed the name from Moortgat Breweries to Duvel Moortgat. But Duvel Moortgat is very good in recognizing success in other breweries and acquiring other companies at the right time. For example, they took over Maritsu. I believe they have now 11 breweries with about 2,000 employees worldwide, and there are still a bunch of vacancies on the website. Those 11 breweries next to Duvel Moortgat are Maritsu, De Koning, the Antwerp City Brewery, Liefmans, La Chouffe, which we've talked about, Brouwerij A in Amsterdam, Beneficio del Ducato in Italy, we've talked about that one as well, Brasserie Bernard in the Czech Republic, and then in the USA they have Firestone Walker, Ommegang in Cooperstown, and Boulevard, not Ommegang in Belgium. They have Chaba in China, and they also have Jar Kombucha, the kombucha brand. Of course, I will link to the videos that I've already made about these breweries, if so. But yeah, they grew immensely, and I do believe that they are still breaking records when it comes to turnaround, because I believe they had 505 million euros turnaround just pre-lockdowns, and I think they even broke that record this year, so they recovered quite well. Anywho, this is the longest video that I've ever made about the brewery, so let's cut to the beer. I will give you 2 minutes of info about the beer, and then we're going to the tasting. So first off, I'd like to tell you about this glass. I have this one here. This is the Duvel 666 glass. They have a whole range of glasses. It's also very collectible. I'm not a collector, but there are collectors of solely and alone Duvel glasses, and there are glasses that go into the hundreds and hundreds of euros. I just buy one glass ever so often, and this one I got for free in the supermarket. But this is my favorite Duvel glass ever. Why? Well, because it is designed by the daughter of my favorite tattoo artist Henk Schiffmacher, in this lovely old school tattoo, sailor tattoo style, and staying true to the traditions because it has an angel and a devil here around the red D. Same thing here, devil, angel. So we have a hell side and a heaven side in a beautiful drawing. They do have a whole range of custom labels, in this case with a Duvel glass hourglass, the lovely branded bottle cap. But this is just the usual Duvel, the 8.5% golden blonde. By the way, originally Michael Jackson, the beer expert, coined the term golden ales for these beers, but then people started using strong blonde because it was a blonde beer and it was quite strong, and that actually won. But in Michael Jackson's early books, you will see the term golden ale ever so often. Now there is a whole pouring ritual for this beer. To pour a perfect Duvel, you hold the glass in 45 degrees and the bottle in 90 degrees. You aim the beer to the bell of the glass. As it starts to rise, turn your glass upright. Take all the yeast, pour it in. If you don't have enough foam, go a bit higher, but I do have enough here. And the trick is, the bottle can't touch the glass, you can't hear a ding, and there is no chuckling. It should be one steady movement. So this is a lovely Duvel, a lot of foam. Because I put in everything, all the yeast, as it should. This is a quite hazy beer. It's not that clear. It is very blonde, very golden yellow. This is the standard golden yellow color, if you ask me. And you see that it is very, very, very active. A lot of bubbling, a lot of burling, mainly from the center, from that engraved D, but also at the sides. And you see that the carbonation goes to the side, goes up, and the foam actually rose since when I poured it. This is even a bit much foam. Now, compared to other beers, a Duvel doesn't only hold a lot of alcohol, but it does hold a lot of carbonation, a lot of carbon dioxide as well. And the carbon dioxide actually strengthens the alcohol taste. So this is a golden blonde, a strong beer that has that extra punch because of the CO2. Now, as I said, in the late 60s, this changed from the Scotch ale to the golden blonde that we still know today, and few things changed back then. So they started using other hops. A Duvel is made with 3 hops. It's not dry hopped, but it is made with 3 hops in the cooking step, and that is Saas, Styrian Golding and Hallertau. And that is something that you can taste in the beer. It is very hoppy, it is quite bitter actually. I should get a spoon for this one. Now, I don't smell that much because the aroma is kept inside the glass very well. But what I do smell is quite dry, a bit of a sweet edge, although it's not a sweet beer, a lot of carbon dioxide, and the funny thing is, for an 8.5% beer, you don't really smell alcohol in it. It's just hidden behind that wall of carbon dioxide, and it's kept in because of the foam, of course. Also very white foam, very nice. We used to play a game with a Duvel when the foam settles. We used to show each other our glasses and see, what do you see in this? Because it settles in funny shapes. It's a bit like the kids' game with the candle wax in the water. Yeah, just as I reminded, or just as I remembered, I mean. It is a very, very refreshing beer. Quite bitter, as you guys know, I like bitter. Comes in quite strong, like I said. The alcohol is being empowered by the carbon dioxide. But still very drinkable, which is of course dangerous because it's an 8.5%, also 33 centiliters, so technically this is already 2 standard alcohol units. Very hoppy. Another thing that the carbonation does is it takes the hop aromas with it. And this has not a dry bitterness, but a true hoppy bitterness. The combination of those 3 hops really comes out strong here. And of course I do see why this is one of the best sold beers next to Pilsners in Belgium, and why it conquered the world. Because I have even friends in Japan that drink Duvel. I do notice when I come in pubs as an advisor or something, that this is often the safe choice for people as well. If they see a menu with too many beers and they can't choose, and they get stressed and they say, I can't choose, just give me a Duvel. So it's such a household name that when people can't decide, they go for either a Pilsner or a Duvel, which is quite funny actually for such a strong beer. Okay, I have bored you guys enough with the history of this beer. I am quite sure that most of you have already tried it. If you haven't, please do so. It is available everywhere in the world. Of course, prices will range from €3 to €16, depending on where you are. But by all means, please do so. This is one of the classics, and this is the classic strong blonde that all the others are measures against. So yeah, you just, as a beer lover, you can't miss out on a beer like this. As usual, if you guys like this video, hit that thumbs up. If you have any questions or remarks, if this history lesson was too long and I even left out some things, by all means let me know. If you want to see more, subscribe, hit the bell icon, you'll get notified whenever I upload something. And we'll see each other in a few days for the next video, and I will be talking about a non-Belgian beer. I will be talking about a very special beer actually. So by all means, go out, have a Duvel, enjoy, and I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers you guys.